Welcome back to another Whiteboard Friday, and today we're going to talk a little bit about how you go about capturing as much of the market as you possibly can. The question is, what is capturing? You can think of it like a funnel where you're getting as many people into the top part of your funnel as possible by creating awareness of your organization and being able to help them to empower them to make the choice down at the bottom of the funnel of your organization. Now, the question a lot of people ask is this primarily search engine optimization? Is this cross promotion or link baiting and things like that? Is it word of mouth? Is it search engine marketing? And the answer to all of that is yes. The bottom line, you can think of this quote here: creating better access to empowered decision. And so ultimately what it comes down to is, like I said, being able to help your organization become more aware with the consuming public and with the referring physicians, and to be able to empower those people to make the right choice. And since the physicians are the gateway to your organization, empower them to make the choice to choose your physicians. Now, let's take a step back and we're going to look at the big picture a little bit. When you look at most surveys, it will say that only 6% of the people in the previous 12 months who have looked for a physician have actually used a hospital's website as part of that decision process. What that means is that 94% of the people who are looking for a physician are not using your website as a resource. Now, that seems sort of odd because most of our clients will look at their Google Analytics and they'll say, well, geez, the Find a Doctor tool is the second most trafficked part of our site, or the third most trafficked part of our site. The only site part of the site that gets more is the career section, people who are looking for a job. Well, what that should tell you is that you're really, really good at getting people who are already in your system to use your site, but not necessarily those who are just looking to choose a physician, which is an important component of this for market share growth and all of your growth and business goals. Now, so this really means that there's a huge opportunity. So let's dig into a couple of tactics. When you're thinking about search engine optimization, most people kind of think about, like, okay, what do I have to do? What is the thing that I need to get done to be able to be at the top of search? And really, it's the wrong question because ultimately there is no one thing. There's no silver bullet. If you want to know what silver bullet is, it's hard work. It's staying on top of this. It's a constant optimization process. And so when you think about this, you've got to think about the basics. You've got to think about things like H1 and H2 tag usage, alt text, robots.txt, XML sitemaps, internal cross-linking, those sorts of things. But you also need to be thinking about more advanced tactics with landing pages, rich snippets, all these kinds of technical and just strategic approaches. Now, the other piece that you also need to do, and this is staying on top of information. So what's happening with Google and their algorithms? What's happening with Bing and the different search engines that you may want to stay on top of? And that requires some resources. Now, one of the resources that I personally follow and that I personally suggest is Moz. You may know it as SEO Moz from a while back, but Doctor.com. You got lots of resources that you can follow that keep you updated, and they run tests on Google to see kind of what's happening and try to stay on top of when Google's doing releases and such. So this is a very important component of search engine optimization. Now, when you think about the internal and external linking, there's a couple of things that you need to know. And one of the worst offending things that I see all the time with physician profiles is that there's not enough linking from internal parts of the site, like service line pages, home pages, things like that, to the physician profiles. And so what ultimately ends up happening is that the page rank for the home page, which is usually your most heavily ranked page, doesn't carry through very well or at all to your physician's profile pages. And while that's not the entire component of search algorithms, it is a component. And so you don't have very high ranking on your physician's pages, which can affect where they show up in search or if they show up in search at all. Now, the other component of this is external linking. Now, a lot of people think of this as, hey, can I get another website that's a healthcare website pointing at me, and kind of thinking of other organizations and such. But there's a lot of opportunity within your own organization for this. So for example, going to your physicians and say, hey, would you put links from your practice website back to the physician profile on your hospital's website, and vice versa. Or if you have a blog site, or if you have a Facebook page or things like that, you can have this as a resource for, hey, for more to know, learn more about Joe Smith, click here, and it takes them from the Facebook page over to the Find a Doctor page that they've got for them. And these sorts of cross-links can have a lot of beneficial effect on your search engine optimization. Now, the core foundation of all search, really of all capture, and this is much broader than just search engine optimization, but certainly has to do with it, is data. Ultimately what you've got to do is you've got to be able to have the data that gives users a good experience, that helps them to make decisions, that empowers their decision. And so ultimately what you've got to do is you've got to make sure that you've got the right information that you're presenting. So some of the things you've got to do, use cases. For example, you've got to think through how the different audiences use your site, how they make decisions, and what kind of data they need to make those decisions. For example, if you had two people who went to, let's say, a consumer electronics website, they were looking for a tablet, and one person was looking for a tablet that was an educational tool for their kids, or maybe it was an entertainment device for their kids because they were going to take a long trip. And then you had another person who went, and they were looking for a business travel device. Well, the questions they're going to ask, and ultimately the type of tablet they're going to choose, is probably going to be fairly different, right? Well, the same thing applies in healthcare with physicians. If you've got two people who come, and I use this example all the time, who are both looking for a pediatrician, and you've got one person who has a healthy kid and one person who has a kid who's a long-term chronic condition, then reality is they're going to ask different questions. The healthy kid, they're going to care a whole lot more about experience, as far as what their experience will be like. So things like philosophy, introductory videos will be very useful. They're going to care a lot about location and where people are. So they're going to think a lot about that. But if you've got somebody who's got a chronic condition in their child, they're going to care a lot about expertise. How good is this physician in this particular area? So the question comes down to, do you have the data to support both of those use cases and the many other ones? We haven't talked about physician referral or any of those other kinds of audiences or caregivers, people who are looking for physicians for their parents or something like that. So having the data to support the different needs that your community has. Now, the other piece of this is reviews and comments. So again, why do sites like Health Grades and Vitals and these other places, why are they getting so much traffic? Well, one of the reasons is because that's one of the only places right now that people can go to get objective patient experience type views from other patients to see, well, what do people think about this doctor, and how do they like them, and what's it like to interact with these doctors? So another component that you can actually work on is using, and this is a trend in healthcare right now, is using your patient experience survey data through whichever vendor you use to make that transparent online. We have entire programs to help organizations do that, but however you get there, using those reviews and those comments is incredibly beneficial for your users, number one. Number two, it can actually help scores go up, so it can actually help the performance of your physicians. And three, it's also very, very useful for search engine optimization and other things like that, for a variety of reasons. Now, just as a quick note, there are certain things that are in fact actually universal for all search engine optimization. Videos, pictures, obviously, bios about the physicians, maybe a lot about their profession, but also a little something about them as a person is very useful. Expertise they have, so this is not just specialties, but clinical interests, diseases they treat, and focus on clinical interests that they have, procedures they do a lot of. These sorts of things become very, very helpful. Think person who goes to get knee surgery. They want to know that the person who does knee surgery isn't just an orthopedic surgeon who does knees once in a while, but somebody who does 400 knees a year, right? And so there's a very big difference there. Another thing, philosophy, awards and recognition. These things are all very, very helpful to users to be able to empower their decision. And again, coincidentally, a lot of it has to do with search engine optimization as well. Now, there's a few questions you can ask yourself. For example, where are people looking for health information right now? A lot of this can be found in places like Pew Internet Research, can be found from talking to other vendors about what they're seeing. There's all sorts of resources that you can follow and kind of begin to get a sense for where are people generally looking for health information. And this can tell you a good bit about what kind of content that you may want to have on your physicians to let people know that, hey, this doctor can help you with this thing that you're looking for. The other thing is how they're looking. So some of this can be obtained through your Google Analytics. Other things can be obtained through things like Google's keyword search tools and other software that's available out there. But the question is, how do you tie how people are already looking into what you're trying to accomplish? So what are your business goals, and and how are people looking for information now, and how do you bring those two together? And a lot of the times that comes down to not only the data that you capture, but then also how you promote it and where you promote it, which again affects the search engine optimization, but ultimately boils down to capture. How do you capture those people? By knowing how they're already looking and then matching that. The other component of this is, what do they care about, and what builds credibility for your physicians. And this is one that you can capture information around. You can do a lot of user testing, you can do a lot of focus groups. Those kinds of things are very helpful for these questions. But the other thing is that you can do this a lot of times intuitively. So put yourself in the shoes of somebody who's looking for a physician, and let's say, for example, you're looking for a physician for yourself from a new diagnosis, or possibly from an aging parent. The question is, what would you care about? That's a very simple question. If you think about what you would care about, chances are it's pretty close to what a lot of other people would care about. Finally, we'll talk about access. So what are the access points that people are getting this information? So are they looking at your site, do they tend to come straight to the Find a Doctor tool? Do they go to a service line page and then go to the Find a Doctor tool? When they're out on the web and they're not on your site, are they on social media? Are they picking this up from other sites like the Vitals and You Compare and those kind of sites? Are they talking to friends, getting referrals from physicians? And the question is, how do you make sure that you get your message, and in this case, your physician's profiles and who they are, in front of people at the points of access they've got? Now, this does bring me into one thing that is very important. So these sites like Vitals, You Compare, Healthcare, Doctor.com, so on and so forth, there's a lot of traffic going to these sites these days. And so a lot of people have this question, well, their profile and data is out of date, they've got wrong phone numbers, they've got wrong addresses, their reviews are not statistically relevant, not particularly good, not representative of the real patient population, and all of these things are true. And so a lot of people are getting to what's called online listing management, or OLM. The question becomes, is that something that you can do? And is there more than that? And so you've got to find a way to identify what sites are actually giving you most traffic, what sites are actually the ones that are most beneficial, the ones you need to focus on most. And then, can you not only recapture some of the traffic from those sites, but can you in fact leverage those sites for your benefit? Now, some of these organizations have programs where you can work with them, and we don't have any affiliation with that. But we actually do have a system that we've been working on called Profile Connections that is all about taking your data and then updating the sites that we partner with. And most importantly, and this is really most important from the recapture standpoint, is to be able to get links on their profiles pages to come back to your profile. So, link for more on Joe Smith, click here, and it takes them back over to your physician profile. This is a way for you to be able to recapture some of that traffic. It's a way for them to be able to quantifiably say, hey, look how much traffic we're sending you. So it's a value add for them as well. And also is a nice SEO boost. So from a standpoint of the online reputation or online listing management side of things, this is an important component to think about, but is relatively young in the sense of having an automated system for doing it because it's such a fragmented arena. But of course, we'll continue working on that. So hopefully, this will give you a framework and a little bit of thought process to be able to go out and capture more of your market. But ultimately, this is a huge opportunity and one that you really should be focused on taking advantage of. So thanks very much.